Welcome back to Play and Pedagogies in the Early Years. This is topic 3. In this topic, we're looking at socio-cultural and socio-behaviourist perspectives of play and pedagogy. In 3.1, we're going to be looking at socio-cultural theories, and again, only a few of the socio-cultural theorists, the ones that perhaps have made the greatest contribution to play and pedagogies, looking at Lev Vygotsky and Barbara Rogoff, William Cassaro and Loris Malaguzzi. Going back to the early years learning framework, it tells us that sociocultural theories emphasise the central role that families and cultural groups play in children's learning and importance of respectful relationships by providing insights into social and cultural contexts of learning and development. Okay, so in terms of moving on, our thinking around this, we're shifting from purely developmental perspectives to perspectives that include the influence of society and culture. Lev Vygotsky was a Russian psychologist who worked and wrote in Russian. He died very young at the age of 37 of tuberculosis. His work was not translated into English until after his death and not widely read in the West until the 1980s. Vygotsky studied child development and the significant roles of culture and personal interaction. He observed how higher mental functions developed through these interactions as children were initiated into the culture of their family and wider community. The recognition of the role of culture in children's learning and development was an important aspect of his theoretical contribution. Vygotsky also identified the explicit and profound connection between language and thinking, which he defined through the development of mental concepts and cognition. He distinguished between speech for social interaction and speech used for thinking, usually out loud in young children as they learn to regulate and conduct their behaviours. He also created the term Zone of Proximal Development, or ZDP, to signify the range of activities that a child is in the process of learning to reach a complete understanding. The lowest level of the zone is what the child can accomplish on their own, their independent level. The highest level is what the child can achieve with the assistance of a more knowledgeable other, an educator, another adult, or a more accomplished peer. In contrast to developmental theorists who believe that learning followed development, Vygotsky theorized that development followed learning through his hypothesis of the ZDP. With the support of a more knowledgeable other, the child is able to learn to do things that go beyond what they could do on their own, and therefore go beyond their actual current developmental level. From this perspective, development always follows the child's potential to learn. The implications of this for practice are that one-off assessments and observations might not provide a true indication of the child's ability. The ways in which Vygotsky's theory has had an impact on educators' practice can be seen in the concepts of supported learning and sustained shared thinking. Both of these forms of interaction identify the level of verbal support an educator gives, which matches the child's understanding of the activity at hand. Vygotsky's theoretical perspective emphasises the significant role of language in the development of abstract thinking. It therefore sees the educator much more involved verbally with children during play activities, as this is the educator's primary means of establishing the child's level of understanding and then of using language to extend that level. From this perspective, children will be encouraged to work together and talk about what they are doing as a means of extending their understanding, as the process of making their ideas more explicit renders their grasp of what they know clearer and more objective.
I'll write this down, Albert.
Hello, I'm Deborah Leong, and this is my colleague Alina Bedrova. We've worked together for the last 4 years in Denver, exploring Vygotskyan ideas and practice. In this film, we're going to be discussing the Vygotskian approach to play.
Lev Vygotsky was a contemporary of Jean Piaget. He was a remarkably well-read person, and his thought was far-reaching. His most definitive piece on play was written in 1933. Entitled Play and Its Role in the Mental Development of the Child, it was originally a speech and contains many interesting insights on play.
He saw fantasy play, in part, as a means in which a child could defer immediate gratification. Instead of throwing a tantrum or swallowing his desire when faced with something he cannot do, a preschool child discovers that he can fulfill his needs in fantasy play. This gives him control of a situation and of himself in new ways. In play, children cannot act any way they please. They must act in a way that conforms to the play scenario. This boy must hold still and play injured until the rescuers come. He cannot dash off, as tempting as it may be. He is practicing self-regulation. Vygotsky proposed that development should always be viewed at two levels. The lower level is what the child can do independently without help from anyone. The higher level is what the same child can do with assistance. The assistance can be direct or indirect. The zone of proximal development, or ZPD, is the distance between these two levels. It defines where development is occurring at any moment in time in a specific arena. It shifts upward as a person becomes competent in a skill and is thus ready to learn others. In imaginative play, Vygotsky sees the child operating at the upper level of his or her ZPD, being a head above himself. The play situation is scaffolding or supporting this child's ability to wait. With roles and a story to support him, the child can act out behaviors that are normally not possible. Let us review the major contributions to a child's development that play makes according to Vygotskians. First, play provides a child with ways to gratify his or her own desires through creating fantasy situations. Play allows a child to separate thoughts from actions and objects with the use of symbolic props and gestures. And third, play allows a child to practice self-regulation and other skills not normally possible in the real world.
Now let's look at the work of Barbara Rogoff, also a sociocultural theorist. Barbara Rogoff's focus of interest and research has been the cultural variation in learning processes, especially in settings where there are no formal schools. She built on Vygotsky's theory of zones of proximal development and developed a theory of guided participation. In line with the sociocultural perspective, she sees learning, or cognitive development, occurring as children and adults share and engage in conversation through recounting, elaborating, listening, practicing, and playing. These interactions, which she observed in some Aboriginal communities in the Pacific Islands, took the form of direct instruction. They could be spontaneous or be a part of a daily routine. Rogoff observed young children watching carefully what the adults did and how they conducted their daily lives. Ultimately, the children were drawn into the work of the community and in many cases took on roles of responsibility for younger children and the preparation of food, as well as joining in the weaving and fishing activities with adults. The children were seen to be sharing in the endeavours of the other members of the community, building on the practices and traditions of their culture. Rogoff clearly considered learning as taking place when children collaborate with each other, children and adults, while being involved in activities with specific purposes and with current practices of their community. Her views of working with children include collaboration, learning through observation, children's interests and the world around them, adults as guides, opportunities to engage young children in normal cultural activities. Rogoff used the idea of a community of learners, which places emphasis on learning through participation in shared activities and experiences. with everyone actively involved in some socio-cultural activity. For educators, this means collaborating with the children and actively involving them in shared purposeful experiences, and no one having all the responsibility for knowing or directing. Enabling children to observe and giving them opportunities to work alongside educators sees learning more like an apprenticeship. Purposeful activities are structured to interest the children and attract them so they want to be involved, rather than asking questions and expecting a response from children. Educators' style of communication is more conversational. Educators provide leadership rather than trying to take charge of all the interactions that occur in this setting. So let's listen to what Barbara Rogoff has to say about the importance of children collaborating. This is a fairly recent presentation that she has given on the element of collaboration, not in an early childhood setting, but at home. But it's quite easily transferred across.
In my 40 years of research in a Mayan community in Guatemala, I've been really impressed with how competent and how collaborative the children are. And it's made me aware of some very challenging circumstances in middle-class life in the United States. I'd like you to look around you. Could we have house lights, please? I'd like you to look around you, and everybody who's under the age of 12, please raise your hand. I don't see anybody raising their hand. Maybe there's one or two. Thank you if you're here. But where are the children? In middle-class society, we have segregated children from community life. And this segregation began about a century ago when our nation began to require all children to attend school and when we excluded children from working in factories. Now, that was an important change, but we've taken it too far. Now, most children in the United States spend a good deal of their time in settings that are only for children, but are controlled by adults. Now, this makes it difficult for them to have opportunities to contribute to important endeavors. And this matters because making a contribution is a source of human dignity and value. In addition, not being able to contribute makes it difficult to learn to collaborate. Collaboration, of course, is an important skill for children as they develop and for our world as we confront the problems that face us. So one of the places where children learn to collaborate is by helping out at home. Consider, do your children help you out at home? Voluntarily? Middle-class children generally don't do much helping at home, even when their parents try to get them to do it. Middle-class parents often assign chores, use chore charts to keep track, and sometimes punish children or pay them for compliance. Well, this is a major source of stress in middle-class families, the struggles over children helping at home. But here's a puzzle. It's confusing why middle-class children don't want to help, because little children everywhere want to pitch in. On the left, you see 3-year-old Anali. She lives in the high Andes of Peru. When an anthropologist showed up at her house, Anali took over the role of hostess while her parents prepared a meal. She was confident in this role and went to get some water. She graciously offered a cup of water to the visiting anthropologist and kept one for herself, saying in Quechua, "Let us drink together." And on your right, you see my 3-year-old grandson, Sali, eagerly mowing my yard. Now, the lawnmower is about as big as he is, but he was so happy to make a real contribution that he pushed the lawnmower around the yard for 20 minutes, mowing the lawn and squealing with delight the whole time. So why do middle-class children not continue to want to help? Children in some other communities maintain an interest in helping around the house. We interviewed parents in Mexico, and mothers told us it was just normal for children to help without being asked. One mother said, well, there's days when my 8-year-old comes home and she says, Mom, you came home really tired, but let's clean up the house. And she turns on the radio and she says, Mom, how about you do that part and I'll do this part and we'll get the house clean. These mothers say when we asked them how they helped their children learn to collaborate, they said that they include even the smallest children and they value their contributions. They also support the children's initiative. So they say it would not be good for them to ask the children to help because it would make it difficult for the children to learn. It needs to come from the heart. We also asked Mexican children about children helping at home, and they said also, yes, of course children help around the house. Everybody helps. We're just part of the family. Everybody in the family helps out. The things that occur at home matter. Children who move in their lives into different situations, they use what they learn at home in other settings. For example, children who help at home were more likely to help an instructor manage a science activity. And when children were asked to plan routes through a model grocery store, they also carried forward what they were familiar with from home. Mexican heritage children in Santa Cruz, actually, were more likely to collaborate with each other, sharing ideas with each other. But middle-class children from European American backgrounds often divided the activity. Some of them did it, like the boy you see on the right, who's pushing his sister away so that he has the chance to do the activity all by himself. Sometimes the middle-class European American kids took turns, but that also does not involve sharing ideas. And sometimes one of the children took a boss role, and the other child simply had to do as they were told. The children who took the boss role tended to be children from families where parents assigned chores. And the children who collaborated skillfully were mostly from families where parents and children worked together. By contributing to work around the house, children learn important skills for collaboration. They learn to align with other people. They learn to be alert to what is going on around them. They learn to be considerate of other people's efforts and activities. And they learn to take initiative to help without being asked. So what can parents do to foster children's collaboration at home? Well, most importantly, they can pitch in together with children rather than assigning individual chores. It makes it much more interesting and fun if you can do it together. Parents can also facilitate children's involvement and contributions and appreciate the efforts that the kids make. In addition, they can treat helping as a normal part of family life. So consider this. Would you pay your partner for helping around the house? Or praise them for helping? Oh, wow, good boy. I'll put a star on your chore chart. Though I have heard that it's an aphrodisiac for women when men do chores. Yeah, the women are clapping. So individual parents can make a difference, but it's much easier if the whole community includes children, gives them the opportunity to contribute. A century ago, when we began to segregate children from community life, we took things too far. Now, it's essential for the upcoming generation to have a chance to contribute and to learn to collaborate. This is important for their own development, but it's also important for effective teams at work. It's important for harmony in marriages and in families. And it's important for peace in the world. Thank you very much.
William Cassaro is an Italian sociologist. Most of his work has been with preschool children and observing them play and interact with each other. Cassaro believes children negotiate, share, and create culture with adults and with each other. Cassaro's theory, called the New Sociology of Childhood, believes that children are active agents in their world. They are not passive receivers, that children are innovative and creative, and that children influence adults in addition to being influenced by them. So I've just chosen three images there for you to think about in terms of children as active agents and how their influence of their culture and their society interplays with their own learning and construction of who they are. Cassaro has a theory under this New Sociology of Childhood that he calls interpretive production, and this is how he sees children learning. It's the way children contribute to the innovative and creative aspects of society, that they interpret and they reproduce, not that they are interpreted and produced. It's quite a significant shift of thinking. Children do not simply internalise society and culture, they actively contribute to the cultural production and change. And importantly for Cassaro, children in their childhoods are affected by the societies and the cultures of which they are members. This is just an extract from one of Cassaro's articles. Just thought it was an interesting example of his understanding of play. Over 30 years ago, in one of my first ethnographic studies of young children, I was sitting on the floor of a block area of preschool, watching two 4-year-old children, Richard and Barbara. They're sitting near each other and building things with small plastic blocks. They have not spoken and do not appear to be playing together. Up to this point, their behaviour would be seen by many psychologists as parallel play. Suddenly, Richard looks over at Barbara and says, "We're playing by ourselves." "Just, we're friends, right?" Barbara asks. "Right," says Richard. The two now coordinate their play and begin to build a house. So as Cassaro says, this example shows kids are social and want to be involved and participate and be part of the group. He states that he saw very little solitary play in his many years of observations in preschools. When children did play alone or engaged in parallel play, it didn't seem to last for long. They were soon doing things together, which is an interesting observation for us when we're thinking about our role as educators. The next theorist we're looking at is Loris Malaguzzi, who is another Italian philosopher, theorist, and he is, of course, the founder of the Reggio Emilia philosophy. So Loris Malaguzzi, reacting to the ravages of World War II, developed and built a preschool to provide a new education that would ensure that the next generation of children would never experience such atrocities ever again. The first preschool in the town of Reggio Emilia opened after Liberation Day in 1945. Fundamental to the Reggio Emilia philosophy is the child is rich in potential, rather than an empty vessel to be filled with locally accepted knowledge and customs. Children are encouraged to develop their own theories about the world and how it works, through exploration in partnership with their teachers, family members, and community involvement. The Reggio Emilia philosophy is based on the following set of principles. Children must have some control over the direction of their learning. Children must be able to learn through experiences of touching, moving, listening, seeing, and hearing, giving rise to the 100 languages children use to understand their experiences of the world. Children have a relationship with other children and with material items in the world that they must be encouraged to explore. Children must have endless ways and opportunities for expressing themselves in their many languages. The environment is considered the children's third teacher and supports complex, varied and sustained and changing relationships between the people, the world of experiences, their ideas and their ways of expressing them, the 100 languages. In documenting children's achievements, teachers inquire and listen closely to children rather than making judgments or reaching conclusions. They make the children's learning visible in many ways, using words, photographs, and drawings. This little video clip that follows is just a really neat little summary of the Reggio Emilia approach and explains the way play and pedagogy are situated within this.
Amelia approach in a nutshell.
An educational philosophy based on the image of the child and of human beings as possessing strong potentials for development and as a subject of rights who learns and grows in the relationships with others. Developed by a young and inspirational teacher, Loris Malaguzzi, he promoted the idea of children as active participators in their own learning in a unique reciprocal relationship with their teachers.
Learning is an active process, not a transmission of pre-packaged knowledge. Rather, the child has 100 languages, meaning children have multiple ways to express themselves. In the Reggio Emilia approach, the educator is considered to be three things: the teacher, the child, and the environment. Teachers are given non-contact time to give them a chance to talk together about the children and to be able to write up their observations and plan what will be offered to the children next. They value and encourage child-initiated activity. They challenge and provoke ideas through open-ended questioning. They respect the child's own ideas. They allow the child to make his own mistakes and learn from them. They closely observe the children to document the child's progress and to judge appropriate moments to intervene. A Reggio school aims to create a welcoming, nurturing, home-like environment that's recognised for its potential to inspire children. It is a place of encounter and connection, interaction and dialogue.